So for this one, it's kind of hard. It's the Ford Mustang. It's made out of paper. So it'll look like this once it's done. It's more folding and it's a little bit more challenging cutting out. So the first thing we're gonna do is with our template, we're gonna start cutting it out. And we're gonna go all the way around. Make sure you don't cut off any of these tabs. And I'm gonna show you a little tip when cutting. So when I cut, like we have all these tabs, it's super hard if you were just to kind of zigzag through, like keep on cutting, like cut in and then turn out. So what I like to do is I like to cut off like, cut a straight line. So I'm cutting all the way straight here. So here we go. And then these two tabs are a little bit shorter, so I'm just gonna move my scissors and I'm just cutting the tops. And then I can cut right there. Then, now that I have all these little triangle shapes, it's a little bit easier to cut out. So I'm gonna angle my scissors and just cut these tiny little triangles. So for this one, it's hard to see where to cut, but we're always doing the outside. Never cut off any of these like tabs. All right, and then on this, we're gonna come on the hood and we have to go all the way to this little corner. So this one is way trickier to cut. And then I'm gonna just continue around this car. And then we're gonna cut over here and do the same. So make sure you get all these tiny little details and not cut into the car too much. So cut just all the way around it, right on their lines. Okay, then once again on this side is where we have all those little like triangle shapes to cut out. So I'm gonna just cut off like the tops and then do the triangles. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so that took quite a while to cut out. And then we also have these little mirrors to cut out. So you can decide if you want to cut them or if you want to leave them off, you easily can too, because it's kind of hard to cut. So I'm going to carefully cut around these. All right. So now that I have everything cut out, I am ready to start folding. This one is a little trickier with folding and it's kind of hard to see the lines, so I'm gonna kind of show you. So wherever you have these tabs, you're gonna see that there's a dashed line. Either it's white or it's like a dark blue. So we got a line all the way across here. So I'm gonna grab it. So I'm having two fingers, pinching them together, trying to get this dashed line. And then you can also kind of tell where it is because it'll meet right at these little tabs and then pinch. So it's a lot of folding for this one. We're gonna fold backwards with everything. And then there will be one fold that we have to flip the other way. So we have to fold it frontwards, but we're gonna fold them all backwards. Okay, so wherever I have a tab, even if it's hard to see the line, we're just gonna flip backwards. And there's one on the road. Okay, then it's almost like the same thing on the other side. Fold these backwards. All right, so now that we have that, we got some more. So we got where the car is right here, we have to fold that one. And on the other side. Okay, now we have to fold all of our little tabs, our glue tabs. So we're just gonna quick fold those backwards. Try and get it on the line. It's kind of hard to fold these tiny ones. And then there's this one. Okay, so now that we have everything folded on the cart, we're ready to start gluing. For this, we're gonna be using a hot glue gun. If you really can't use a glue stick because it'll be way too challenging. So a hot glue gun, we're just gonna be very careful to only use a tiny amount of glue. So when we're putting this together, I always try and look how does it go together. So this little line right here, from where the glue tab and like the blue meets, that's gonna line up right here. So it starts to give that car some shape. Okay, so it's really important to make sure that this edge is hitting where like the blue meets. Okay, so I'm gonna just put a little bit of glue. So I'm gonna squeeze this trigger just a little bit, just add a tiny amount of glue. And then we're gonna stick that piece where it goes. Okay, so now this one, it goes a little bit more straight because that's how the car goes. So I'm gonna look, see how it goes. Then I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of glue. And then we're gonna stick it together right where joining the blues. And you might have to let it dry for a little bit. Okay, now our next one, that's kind of like angled right here, so it's gonna line up like that. So we're gonna add a little drop of glue. Don't worry about getting glue on this whole piece. You don't need that, just a tiny drop on there. And then stick them together. All right, so then this one goes right there. We're gonna do the same, adding a tiny drop of glue. And then this is curving in. So we're almost like, it's almost making a half circle, which is really cool. So our tiny drop of glue, and then make sure you stick it and line it up. Otherwise it won't give it that car shape. Okay, so we got that nicely done. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side, so that they're back end of the car, and then I'll do the front. So we have the back end of the car all folded and glued in place. So now we're gonna do the front, and the front's gonna be pretty similar to the back. So I'm gonna start on one side, and I got this, the windshield. So we're gonna add glue, and then it's gonna line up to give it that windshield curve. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of glue here, and then try and stick it. To where the blues meet. All right. Then we got our hood shape, so I'm gonna line it up first, and then I'll add some glue. Okay, this front, like the grille and front part of the car, that's kind of the most challenging. So we're gonna do right by where this headlight is first. Tiny bit of glue here. Glue this headlight. Then I'm gonna double, like just make sure it's nice and dry because the next part is more challenging. All right, so I waited just a little bit. When we're using a tiny bit of glue, it dries pretty fast. So where this car kind of jets out right here, that is where it has to get folded backwards. So we have this line here right under the Mustang logo. We're gonna fold that backwards. It's a little bit. Okay. So then now you can see where it lays flat. That's creating that fold backwards. Then instead of gluing this little triangle piece, because that's kind of challenging, I'm just gonna skip it and go on to glue this piece. So this piece will end up sticking right here. So it's gonna go right like that. So I would make sure you line it up first, then add your little bit of glue and stick it together. And it's so important to get it to line up nicely. Okay. So that was kind of the trickiest part. So we're gonna do the same thing on the other side, and then I'll show you this kind of trouble area again. All right, so right by the headlight, so we got this tab, we're gonna be placing it and always like kind of test it out. That will go like that. Tiny bit of glue. Make sure the headlight is sticking so everything's lined up there. Make sure it's dry because you don't want it to start moving on you. Then we're gonna skip this tiny little tab and we're gonna go down to the bottom tab. So this bottom tab will line up and it's gonna go like this. So always, kind of try and move it to where it goes first before gluing. Because that just makes the paper move. So that is how it'll go, and we got that indent. So that's kind of the hardest part. So I'm gonna add my little glue and then stick these together. Okay. So we got that all glued together. There's this tab on the bottom. I don't know what it's used for. We really don't need it, so you can either cut it off, you could glue it down, or you could just leave it. It's kind of up to you. Then we have our mirrors. So with this, you can kind of see that there's this X. You're gonna fold it in half right by that X. So it combines the papers. So you'll have the blue on one side and then the mirror part on the other. And this is super hard to deal with because they're super tiny. So once you fold in half, you're gonna add a little bit of glue just to stick them together. So a tiny bit of hot glue, like the smallest amount, and stick it together. So I'm gonna do the same for the other side, fold in half kind of by that X. Then glue them together. Smallest amount of glue. Then with this X, you're gonna fold backwards. So right by it, you're just gonna fold it backwards because that is where you glue it to. So I'm gonna fold this one backwards too. All right. Then on our car, you can see there's an X right here and there's an X on this side. So you're just gonna kind of figure out which side does this little mirror go on. So we want the gray kind of facing like the back. And then our here I'll go. The blue will be on the other side. Okay, then we'll add just a tiny bit of glue to by this X. A small amount, that's probably even too much. And then you'll stick it where there's that X on the car. Okay, so we'll do the same thing on the other side. Tiny, tiny bit of glue. Being very careful. And stick it to where that X is. All right. Okay, so this is our Ford Mustang with paper. I got all this little glue, hot glue strings on me. Okay, pretty cool.